Hey there, comic friends. I'm Travis, and it's time to talk comics. Talking comics. These are books from the week of August 7th, 2024. In no particular order, just whatever my thoughts are on the books I read that week. Love Me, a romance story. This is a Mag Cave produced comic. This is the final issue, I believe, issue 4. It says the end of it. It really is about the art, about Cardoselli's art with Scaramella on colors. The story is fairly simple. Robot's living his life, falls in love with a girl. Girl gets kidnapped. Rescues girl. It's a sweet story. I enjoyed it, but man, the art is just cool. It's just got its own kind of vibe, and I just dig it. I dig it a lot. Artists, I'm gonna have to pay attention to see if anything else shows up by them. I need to do some digging around. I don't do a lot of digging around on the internet anymore, but I need to do some digging around. See if I what else has he done? Anything? Has he done anything? But just super, like I said, I really enjoyed it. Simple story. But for the art, definitely, it was good. I enjoyed it a lot for that. Nothing deep, but just a sweet, fun story, and it's really cool art. It's got its own vibe, and I appreciate that. Next up, we have Detective Comics. This is issue 1087. The Batman starts to reestablish himself. The Bat family is helping him out with that, which is all interesting. Freeze makes his move also because everybody wants Gotham back. As messed up as Gotham was, it's better than the Gotham that's currently being presented, as lots of people are being rounded up in a supernatural gentrification of Gotham, basically, is what it is, kind of what it comes down to. The thing that of note that interested me the most in it, I'm not reading the other Batman. I haven't read like some of the events because I know there was like the Gotham Wars that was written, and it was some sort of a fight between Catwoman and Batman. So clearly, there's all kinds of stuff going on there after we had the long run up to the Batman wedding. A few years ago and that sort of stuff. I am a Batman Catwoman shipper. I am totally okay with the two of them, having a relationship, getting married. I think they could have gotten married and both books function and they did their own things and then could do stuff together or whatever. But I'm sure that doesn't excite a lot of other people. At any rate, so in this, they kind of establish maybe where they're at going forward. In this book, which is interesting to me, like I said, because I don't read all that other stuff. Basically, Batman's there, goes to have a conversation with Selene, with Catwoman, and he kind of implies, well, when this is all over, maybe there's us, and she's like, yeah, but you're not the same guy who went into the desert has come out of the desert, so. That means, assuming that gives them the ability to start at ground zero or start at, nothing, which would all be interesting and whatnot, and a reasonably clean way to further separate the two characters. I have no idea what's going on in the Catwoman book anymore. Back when I did read the first, 20 issues or so, she was still dealing with that heartache, but I'm sure they've moved on. As comics does, in some places moves on, in other places it doesn't move on at all. But I'm still really enjoying Detective Comics. This issue, like I said, the villains have started having a the Gotham villains are started having a play in things. I think some of those are planned, and some of those are maybe not so planned. Kind of a deal. I'll be curious to see about the Joker's daughter at the end of this, because she's like the Joker. She's nothing but dangerous. Just still really, really liking Ram V's run of Detective Comics. I have no idea how long he'll be on it or how long this whole thing will go, but I've been enjoying every bit of it. Is it Detective Batman? No, it's not. Is it Batman fighting back from the brink of non-existence? Yes, it is, and I enjoy that road as much as I enjoy the detective mystery stuff. So great stuff. Thoroughly enjoying Detective Comics. Next up is Cruel Universe. This is the science book. It's Entertaining Comics, the EC logo on there, but this is from Oni Press. I believe Oni Press is also doing a horror version also. A la, these books kind of existed back in the past. Don't know if Cruel Universe in itself did, but there were definitely books along those lines. This cover, to some degree, other than being painted, it's got that what always feels like to me is the Wally Wood vibe, but because I just really enjoyed a lot of Wally Wood stuff that was in space. The classic domed helmet and whatnot. So there's like 4 stories in here by different creators. None of them necessarily particularly standed out as being like, wow, this is awesome. This really got me. The first story is what's on the cover. It was good. Had a twist in the end of it. Felt very Twilight Zone-esque. You think you as the reader are reading the story from what you assume is a particular vantage point, and then find out that it's not. It's another vantage point, which is fine. There's a couple other twisted mystery type sci-fi type things in here that are somewhat fun. I'll pick up the book for a while. I like anthologies. I'm hoping we're going to get some other ones that just kind of wow my socks off, because like I said, none of these particularly did, but they were all all enjoyable. And the nice thing about an anthology book, unless they write it over multiple stories, which I think kind of wrecks the anthology vibe. And for me, I like the short, concise. If it's one I don't like, it's 4 to 6 pages and I'm done. I can move on to a different story or whatever, kind of a thing. So, Oni Press, Cruel Universe. Book I've been looking forward to, The Power Fantasy. This is by Kieran Gillen and Caspar Wingard. I'm pretty sure I had his name down at one point and I'm murdering it again now. Both creators that I thoroughly enjoy. Unless it's some hardcore Marvel thing from Gillen, I typically try everything he does, and I certainly try everything that Cass does. So this is a story about supers and superpowered, and in this case, superpowered. There's definitions in this book about what superpowered is between superpowered countries and superpowered individuals. This story has some backstory from the 1960s in it, establishing who some of these people are when they were younger, and some agreements that they have come to as to how they're going to make things work. Because countries with nuclear weapons, it's ensured that somebody's gonna at some point do first strike and blow somebody up and cause all kinds of problems. And so the supers have morally taken it upon themselves to control that. And this fellow is given another superpowered person the option: do we try and balance that, or do we become gods of sorts and control the whole thing? The God one doesn't go over so well, so they agree to the balance. And then we get to the 1999, I think it is, which I think is our current timeline. Maybe not, but that's where a good chunk of this one takes place, in the more modern type era. And we see that balance enacted. We have another superpowered being that causes some chaos, and the answer to fixing that is brutal. Really interesting. Really curious to see where we go with this. I think there's going to be a lot of thought as far as the what the implications would be if you had people with superpowers, Superman and greater levels of superpowers. There's not a lot. There's only a few. But how does that all play out? How do they play with each other? How do they operate in the world? How do they? All of that. I think is going to be potentially looked at in it, and so I really, am interested in all of that to ponder, because in my older years I have certainly pondered that about superheroes with as much superheroes as I've read. Art is great. It's the 1960s stuff. And then we get into our modern era stuff. We got this guy who's with a gravity well is literally flying his own little city over Manhattan, which makes the United States cranky. And so the United States has their way with him, and then chaos ensues. Actually, really wasn't chaos. And then there's this mad thing. Any of you who bought this book, did you read this? I had to get a magnifying glass out because I'm an old man, and I have old man eyes because that is just super tiny. I mean, the top part of it is obviously this book is published by blah blah blah, and the trademark thing. But then it gets into trying to find it here. I have a hard time getting my eyes to, that. Power fantasy contains trace elements of cultural commentary, irony, and more than your recommended daily allowance of references to the Loving Spoonful. It should be consumed as part of a diverse diet of sequential art. Power fantasy can't believe Rhea has talked it into this, as it means it'll have to write something here every issue, and Power Fantasy needs to sleep. Power Fantasy loves you. And then it has it in probably every other language known to man on there. Anyway, so watch the back matter, because the back matter, probably that back cover is going to have stuff in it every time. Like I said, I'm going to have to get the magnifying glass out to read it, because, boy, that's a stream ass. But super excited for this. Looking forward to seeing what it is. Looking forward to the monthly adventure that is the Power Fantasy from that first issue. Another awesome book that I always enjoy, Fantasy Adventure of Kea. This is issue 20, and it could easily go on for 100 more issues. This starts our next adventure as they go down the Dragon Road. You get some potential explanations as to why it's the Dragon Road, and some of the horrible stuff that might be seen on the Dragon Road. We get some more interesting stuff go on with Jin. Stuff that was in his head is now physically manifested, it seems. So we'll see what goes on with that. But at any rate, still just a brilliant book. Wes Craig, his art, he is just a master storyteller. Visually, I love the story too. It's just great, simple but not simple story of just high adventure, and I really dig it. In this issue, we actually come across stuff that has to do with her arm, so that's interesting stuff. See how that works, what goes on with that. Birds of Prey, issue number 12. I've been digging this story and the book up until this issue. Disembodied voice asks, talking comics with her. She's behind reading books, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I the one thing I'll say about Birds of Prey, issue number 12, is the cover's cute. I feel like what's going on in the book is going on too long. This is one time too many. There are some cute moments in this issue. They're going through pocket dimensions, and every time they jump through the pocket dimension, whoever's the first person through influences whatever the next dimension looks like. This one ends up being cartoons, which in itself is can be amusing and funny. Barda freaks out because like cartoons are like you're supposed to think of something safe. Sin's the one that made the choice. You're supposed to think of something safe. Cartoons are the most dangerous and violent thing that's that's out there, which I found that part funny. There's some funny stuff with fighting some bunnies, which is funny. But the art, as a general rule, it's not my jam. It works for Teen Titans Go. It doesn't work for me personally. I'm sure lots of other people thought it was great and lots of fun and whatnot. And to me, it was a slog to get through because this is just not visually more than a couple panels. This is not what I'm interested in looking at or reading. We've kind of continued to kick the let's mention hop to run from our bad guy more and more. To me, it's starting to wear, and if I don't have the great art and the fun stuff to go along with it, it kind of makes it wear even more. I think that the idea in here is that they're going to potentially, kill somebody, but I'm not sure exactly how that works because they're superheroes. The end is interesting. The end, character from Spirit World shows up on the outside with Constantine, and they're still trying to figure out what happened to him. She sticks her hand through and goes, "You sure everybody isn't dead?" So that's interesting. That's. But yeah, wasn't super excited by the issue because I didn't care for the art. So I'm hoping that the next issue kind of squares everything, and we're gonna move on at some point because it just feels like we've done the same thing quite a bit. And it was a fun and cute gimmick to have each issue them look like a little bit different and have a different vibe, and all of that has been fun. But they spent 4 issues this ordeal about trying to find Barbara Gordon. They pop in here, and I don't know, because it's Cartoon World, it was just really easy to fly up into the air and there she is and rescue her. I don't know. So that issue lost some steam for me. Bummer, but it did. Hoping it corrects itself for me in the next issue. Up next, we have Public Domain. This is issue 7. All Chip Zdarsky, and man, I like the dude. He can write some great stuff. He writes some pretty decent dialogue, some good chuckle points in it. The editor that they've gotten has shown up to the studio as they're getting ready to make their version of Domain. There's still some massive conflict between the old school people and the new school people. Editor is going to solve that. It's her way or the highway as far as she's concerned. She's taking on some of the newer versions of stuff. She kind of puts everybody in their place, which is awesome. Kind of feel like that's what an editor needs to do when the ship's kind of going all over the place. Get it all right and get it going in the same direction. Upsets some people, and there's some other conflict that goes on because the other half of this, because this half is kind of like the easy, if you're a comic book person, analogy is this is mostly the Kirby story, and then you've got the guy's nothing like Kirby. Don't get me wrong, nothing, not visually, not attitude, nothing. Just he got screwed out of. I guess he's a lot of creators for that matter. Got screwed out of all the royalties and rights and everything that had to do with the character. And now suddenly they've won it back. Versus the Stan Lee version, the mouthpiece that, the guy the showman who basically sees control of everything and gets credit for everything. He's having his own conflict with his own people because he's trying to write a Domain comic also. So these competing Domain characters and worlds, which will be interesting. And so both of the older guys are in a lot of conflict. They end up at the same writer's bar or comic book bar, and then have some conflict there. Some really interesting stuff was thrown at the end of this that could cause some even extra problems. I'm hoping not, but just enjoying this book. It has the same vibe as Sex Criminals without the sex content because it's Chip Zdarsky drawn and whatnot. To me, it just immediately has that kind of a vibe, and I always enjoyed. I enjoyed that comic quite a bit. I like the way Chip draws people and and emotions and all of that stuff. It's all simple and smart, and I enjoy it quite a bit. I need to watch some other people's videos. I don't know that I don't know if the because there's a sister comic book to this, which is the actual comic book that these people are putting out. And I'm curious about that. Not enough to buy it, but I'm curious about that book. So I need to find some other people who are reading that book and if they've put some videos out about it yet or not. Because I'm curious to see what that story is like. Is it sticking purely to you're in that world like you would be reading a regular superhero book, or does it have some fourth wall elements to it because of this book? I'm curious about that. The one thing I'd be curious about, and if there is, how are they dealing with that? So anyway, fun stuff. Still really enjoy it. Glad that it got enough teeth that it was able to continue to be a comic beyond those first 6 or 8 issues that Chip put out on Substack a while ago, and then reprinted into Image, and now we've got this ongoing story. I'm assuming this is new stuff. This is stuff beyond that initial thing that was there. So, enjoying it. And lastly, it is the Deviant issue number 7. Holy cows, this book is so good. This issue especially, I wasn't sure after last issue, you're kind of like, wow, where's this going? We're telling a story for completely different people now. How's that going to work? It works really well. Our person here, I can't remember his name. Is it Michael? He shows up at the prison to have a conversation with the supposed Christmas killer, to try and find out what his fiance had found out, because they're trying to figure out if he really is a killer. He can't really be a killer, trying to figure all this stuff out. Some great conversation and thought between those characters in it that I thought was just really amazing. There's also this great character in here. The FBI agent has the mask from the killer, and takes it to talk to a woman who makes the mask, sells them on Etsy or whatever. Great conversation with her. She is quite the character and quite the treat. And oh boy, by the end of the issue, but just this issue just really hit for me. It was just really, really, really good on a lot of levels. I will say though that the artist, I think last issue I commented on the fact that the art felt a lot looser. Joshua Hickson's art was a lot looser in this, and this one continues to be the same. I mean, I can physically pick up issues between the two, and they're the first like 5 issues are tight, really tight, and in this it's looser. It's still good. It still completely conveys everything that needs to, and everybody is still who they are, and all of that. So it's fine. It's just interesting that it loosened up enough that I would be able to tell that. And I feel like the plot, which is the other thing I've read that this artist did art on, another wonderful horror comic, that it did the same thing. So I don't know if it's a matter of time or whatever, but just this is such a great horror book, and like I said, in this issue, just delivered really well on the suspense, on other thoughts about other things, that other commentary on stuff. In my mind, good horror isn't just hack and slash. It has actual thought on stuff, like most stories for that matter, right? If you're reading a sci-fi story, cool to have laser beams and all of that, but clearly to make it gripping, it needs to have, some other elements, some other relatable or interesting thoughts, and I think this book delivers that in some ways, and some commentary on being a misfit, on being someone who doesn't quite fit in with everybody else's version of what they should be, and some of the consequences based on that. And in this book, some of those consequences are pretty severe, because we're talking about people being blamed, rightfully or wrongly, we don't know, for some horrible acts and the consequences of that. And it's just really easy to pin it on the weirdos out there, the people who are different than everybody else, and that. So there's some interesting stuff in there, or at least I found it interesting. So still continue to be really excited about this book. I'm guessing it is 12 issues. I guess I don't really know for sure off the top of my head, but thoroughly enjoying this mystery, this crawl along, the characters that we have now. The FBI agent's a great character, really interesting. This guy ends up being more compelling than what I thought he was. I mean, I thought he was just a supportive other half, the supportive spouse, and now they're in the thick of it, and it's all really, really good. And the ending is that last page is just it's a great page. Anyway, the Deviant, really digging it. That's it. What'd you think? Did you read any of these? Am I wrong? Am I right? Whatever. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.